20 years ago, on this day, our nation changed forever. A horrific tragedy occurred in our country. Planes hijacked by terrorists crashed into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Thousands of lives lost. For many, 9/11 feels like it just happened yesterday. The pictures, the people, the sounds. 2 decades later, and there are still so many stories to be told. This morning, you'll hear a few as we look back on the day we will never forget. Welcome to the Good Morning Show. You're taking a live look from the 9/11 Memorial in New York, also known as Ground Zero. Ed, here in the Triad, there are several events happening to remember 20 years ago on this day and the people that died, the first responders that ran toward danger when everyone was trying to run away from it, and the weather to be at those events, which most of them happen outdoors, is going to be cooperative.
Yeah, it's a very somber, very somber day for our nation as we remember. And yes, indeed, the weather will cooperate today. As a matter of fact, really, the weather over much of the nation is quiet.
On 9/11, planes hijacked by terrorists crashed in New York, Virginia, and Pennsylvania, but the pain left behind burned across the nation. Here in Greensboro, Michael Fangman's brother was a flight attendant on one of the planes that hit the World Trade Center. He has not spoken about that day publicly in the last 20 years. His first time doing so was with WFMY's Grace Holland.
I think really every year it gets tougher for me.
Year after year, Michael Fangman cannot avoid the grief.
I start thinking about this in July.
He tries to laugh it off.
I go, well, it's around the corner. And, you know, it affects the way I act. Sometimes, as I said, I get angry.
But this year marks 20 years since his brother died on 9/11 when his plane hit the World Trade Center.
It's just another year I didn't have time spent with him.
The brothers were 2 of 7 children with a 12-year age gap between Michael and his younger brother, Robert.
He was also Bob, Bobby, Rob. It all depends on who you knew, what circle he was in. In my opinion, out of the 7 kids, he was the best of us.
Michael says his brother was a successful Verizon wireless salesman, but hated the job.
He took a 50% pay cut and became a flight attendant.
Robert flew for about 7 months before he boarded United Flight 175 on September 11th, bound for Los Angeles.
That's all he did. He showed up for work and was doing his job. But him and 3,000 other people.
Michael did not know his brother was on board that plane when he watched it crash into the second tower. Now he avoids watching video from that day.
I love my brother, and I will remember him the way he was.
He instead remembers him through photos with family and friends, but no tributes can bring him back.
My family's hurting, and will be hurting as long as we're alive.
He hopes this 20-year mark serves as a reminder for us to all love those closest to us.
Be there for each other at all times, because you never know when they're going to be taken from you.
In Greensboro, Grace Holland, WFMY News 2.
The 9/11 Tribute Museum is one of the most visited locations in New York City. Not only does it honor the lives lost, it also serves as an educational experience for the younger generation. Children born around or after 2001 are too young to remember the horrifying moments of that day. But by visiting the memorial, they are enlightened.
I wasn't alive during the time, but yeah, it is sad to see like how many people lost their lives just doing like their everyday thing, working or just walking by. So yeah, it's important to remember it because it's a really big thing that happened to our country.
Several memorials, tributes, and ceremonies honoring this historic day are happening today in the Triad. Registration opens this morning at 7:30 for Greensboro's Memorial Stair Climb, honoring the public safety personnel who died at the World Trade Center. It will be at the Belmead parking deck on North Green Street. The event is open to the public and starts at 9 o'clock. Also in Guilford County, the Sheriff's Office is hosting a 9/11 Ride to Remember motorcycle rally. It will be at the Guilford County Sheriff's Office District 2 parking lot on Millstream Road in McLeansville. Registration opens at 9:30 and the event starts at 11. And in Forsyth County, Senator Richard Burr will attend a 9/11 commemoration ceremony at Reagan High School. It will take place in the main gym, followed by a 9/11 public safety challenge put on by the school's JROTC program. Ceremonies are planned across the country in honor of the nearly 3,000 lives lost on September 11, 2001. Here's a live look at Ground Zero in New York, the largest 9/11 memorial site, the area where the Twin Towers once stood. That's where CBS's Bradley Blackburn is this morning, continuing our coverage.
We're here to pay our respect to all our friends and our co-workers and everybody else, all the innocent lives that were taken that day.
Iowa firefighter Nate Smith came to New York to honor the victims.
Just to kind of pay tribute to fallen brothers and sisters. It's pretty emotional.
Yesterday, a candlelight service was held near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where United Airlines Flight 93 went down.
It's a beautiful memorial to all of them, and it seems like yesterday that it happened.
A beam of light now shines into the sky over the Pentagon. More than 125 people died when a hijacked plane slammed into the building on 9/11. President Biden will attend memorial events at all 3 locations today, starting right here at the site of the World Trade Center. The President and First Lady Jill Biden arrived in New York City late last night. Mr. Biden discussed the September 11th tragedy in a video released by the White House.
No matter how much time has passed, these commemorations bring everything painfully back, as if you just got the news a few seconds ago.
Nearly 3,000 people died in the initial attacks, a death toll that's still rising as injuries and illnesses continue to claim lives.
Every weekend, we ask you to join in on our timely conversation by sending in your feedback. Well, today, there's not a more timely event than the 20-year anniversary of 9/11. Earlier in the show, we asked you to text in your thoughts on how our nation has changed in the last 20 years. What do you remember from then that's different now? Well, we dug through some old video here at the station and found a story featuring a triad teenager who was just 3 years old in 2001. WFMY talked with her for the 10th anniversary of 9/11. Listen as she discusses changes in airport security and how people were feeling about flying back then.
Since September 11th, people are more nervous about air travel due to the planes crashing into the Twin Towers. Also, the cost to ride a plane increased, which affects the ability of families to be together, or it affects their vacations. Why did it increase? The United States of America's airline security is much bigger and more intense now. We now have to take off our shoes, put everything into a tray, and be examined by a security guard or a machine.
Now, we asked you all to weigh in and tell us how you noticed things change since 9/11. Here's some of the comments we got in. Robert says he remembers the following weeks after 9/11. He says it was eerie to not see or hear planes flying. He says airlines were grounded. Airline flights were grounded. One viewer said, sadly, our nation is now divided, a mere shell of what she was on September 12, 2001, the day after. Mark Young says we were united, unlike now. And Nicholas Kivett sent in this picture and says when we went to war after September 11th, he says he made a lot of new friends he will never forget. Nicholas, thank you so much for your service, and thank you to all the service members that have been overseas and went overseas in their lifetime, in our country's history, especially since 2001. Ed, we have talked to people all week leading up to this day. We've done stories on it, several of them that we've showed during the show today. And that's the one thing that seems uniform across the board from all of the interviews I did, even yesterday, was remembering how united everyone was in the days, weeks, months following that day.
Yes. If anything good could come out of a horrible, horrible tragedy like this, it unified this nation. And I remember that. And even though we were all in shock after the tragedy, it felt good to be united as a nation. And I pray for that now, because we're a divided nation. Let's face it, in many respects we are. a divided nation. And I would hope that we could get that back, but that was one good thing that came out of it. Everybody in this nation, it didn't matter if you were a Republican, a Democrat, what your race was, what your background was, socioeconomic status. Number one, you were an American.
And something that really stuck with me in one of the interviews I did yesterday was with someone who worked at Piedmont Triad International Airport, and he said, I wish that another tragedy did not have to happen again for us to all be united, and that certainly stuck with me.
Yeah. You don't want to have the tragedy to force people to come together. You just want people, and maybe this 20th anniversary and the remembrances that we have will kind of help to trigger memory in the people of what we had when we were unified as a nation. So maybe, that would help. In terms of the way we've changed, obviously, I grew up seeing terrorism happen in other parts of the world, but now we know it can happen right here at home. Hopefully it'll never happen again, but we have to be vigilant and have to stay safe in this country.
Thank you all for weighing in and sending in your comments. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back. "20 years since September 11, 2001. It's one of those things where you almost can't believe that it's been 20 years, but it still feels like yesterday.
Yes.
And it's a hard day. I woke up and I felt it, almost like a punch to the gut.
Yes.
And I just want to let everybody know, whether you lost someone, whether you know somebody who was impacted by this day, we're thinking of you.
And we must never forget those people who died on this date 20 years ago today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for joining us this morning. CBS This Morning is next.